112-94, the final score in Game 1 of the second round of the NBA playoffs for the Toronto Raptors in their Eastern Conference semifinal with the Boston Celtics. And things did not go the Raptors' way tonight. An unfamiliar game for Raptors fans. They saw the team look somewhat out of sync for both beyond the three-point line and on defense. I'm Akil Augustine, joined by Jonesy, the principal, Paul Jones, and Randy. We don't have a nickname for him, so we'll just call him Handsome like everyone else does. Urban.
I'll take it.
Savannah Hamilton will join us later in the show, but first off, I'm going to pick the brain from the principal. And
not much left to pick, brother. It's all picked over. Right. It's all beat up after this game.
We'll take what we can, Jonesy. Beat up, speaking of the Raptors. They didn't look like themselves tonight. Let's talk about two things. First off, the three-point line on both sides of the ball. And defensively, what were your takeaways from this? I guess it would have to be a building block game now as you move forward in this series.
Well, Raptor fans shouldn't be surprised, Akil. Raptors, after winning 3 of their last 4 game ones, are now 5-18 overall in game 1 of series. This one left a bad taste. Because their defense wasn't up to customary standard, with Boston shooting upwards of 60% in the first parts of the first half, and then finishing the game at 47%. And then Toronto, on the other hand, as you said, couldn't get anything going. They were 10 of 40 from beyond the arc. They only shoot 37% for the game. And it was one of those where they got down early, and in trying to come back, when their offense was good, Boston's offense was good. And when the Raptors' defense was good, it seemed like they couldn't make shots. Only Boston's defense was good. So they could never really eat into the lead. They were down 16 after a quarter. They cut it to 9. It was like 39-30. They had a couple of good chances to eat into the lead, couldn't make shots. They were getting stops at the other end. And the next thing you know, they're down 17 at half. And they cut only 2 points off, and they're down 15 after 3 quarters. They couldn't mount a charge. And, I want to hear Randy's thoughts and yours, but we've all been in games where you get down early and then you start to play with a sense of urgency, and you don't get the breaks to validate your play. You don't get a bucket, a couple of consecutive stops and a couple of buckets to suddenly cut the lead. And now you feel like, okay, I'm back in this, and the other team starts to worry. That didn't happen for the Raptors in this game this afternoon / this evening. And Boston played with that sense of confidence. And I thought the harder the Raptors tried and the more urgent they played, at times they got out of character. As you said, Akil, the defensive rotations weren't there. Guys were getting open shots. The three at the end of the half said everything to me. Fred VanVleet turned around with his hands in the air, said, guys, I covered this guy. He passed it. I had to run over and close out. Where are you guys? And that's kind of what came through to me, that they just were out of sync. They were playing with that sense of urgency, kind of bordering close to panic, and they just could never put it all together. Randy?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there, Jonesy. I felt the same way. Really, from a Raptors fan perspective, really strange game to watch because you're used to them playing a certain way with a certain type of energy. And today they just looked in slow motion, at times, and most of the game, and even less than slow motion. It was weird. Even when they mount this like little charge coming off into a timeout, there was no real energy. I don't know if it was the emotional week that they had prior. They just didn't look like themselves. They didn't have that scrambling nature on defense, that sort of composed chaos that we're used to seeing. Like you mentioned, almost frantic, but knowing what they're doing. I didn't see much of that. But having said that, I thought there were multiple moments in this game where it could have swung.
Yes.
And it just didn't. It just didn't. There was one point the Raptors, they cut the lead 39-30, and they went 4 times down the floor without a bucket, without Boston scoring. Raptors didn't score, and Boston didn't score. So I thought that was a key pivotal moment for them. Look, the three-point shooting wasn't great either. The Raptors starters 4 for 25 compared to the Celtics starters 14 for 32. Just not a Raptors game. It was strange.
Yeah, I alluded to that earlier, and you touched on a topic there, Randy, the starters. Let's talk about the start of the game, because the first quarter goes down in history as 39-23 in favor of the Celtics. And you look at the other 3 quarters, and they're pretty much neck and neck throughout. So let's talk about the job of the Celtics starters, because when I look at the makeup of these two teams, I don't see the traditional NBA in that. I love Jason Tatum and Brown, but they are very similar to what you get as complementary parts, but maybe a little bit more polished when it comes to Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, and how these two teams are made up of. It's like everyone's got to be contributing. Jonesy, Randy, when you looked at the job that the Celtics starters did, it was impressive that they were able to get that from that 5 group.
Well, they got some great play from Marcus Smart too, and like you said, Akil, some of the other guys stepping forward. I actually thought the Raptors did a good job early on of neutralizing Jason Tatum. I thought they did. But they let Jaylen Brown get going, and he was the outright leading scorer in 3 of the regular season games. And he's a guy that gets a lot of his stuff in transition. Live ball turnovers. Toronto had turnovers early, and they may not have been actual fast break points, but you're coming down with a broken floor, and Jaylen Brown's able to knock in threes and get going. And it was one of those things where the Raptors, it wasn't that bad. They were hanging in, they're down 10-12, but Jason Tatum wasn't going. So it's good that he wasn't going, but the bad part is when that guy gets going, what happens to the game now? And I thought, again, they got great play from Marcus Smart. I thought Daniel Tice was big early with his rebounding and his presence in the lane and just scoring a little bit for them. And then, Kemba Walker ends up with 18 points too. So Boston not as deep. Brad Stevens maybe figured he had to ride his starters a little bit more. And I thought they did a good job getting out to a great start.
What did Daniel Tice have? 14 rebounds. He came in averaging 3.8 rebounds from the last series. Like that from a Raptors perspective, that's your strength. Big man up front, and your point guard position. And you give up 14 rebounds to that guy. I just felt like very, very out of sync. I'm going to go back to that second quarter where it felt like the Raptors were playing better. They held Boston to 1 scoring possession in the first 6 minutes. And they sort of looked like they were going to get back in the game, but just didn't capitalize. And they still end up giving up 17 in the next 6 minutes. So for me, it was the defense. And you're right, Jonesy. I thought they did a really good job on Jason Tatum early on. And then, of course, he finished a good game. And then Jaylen Brown had that good start, and then he finished 6 of 18. But that's the luxury of having 2 guys like that, right? I mean, when one's not picking it up, when one's not playing well, the other one picks him up and vice versa. And then, of course, Kemba Walker all of a sudden had 18, which you don't really even notice in a game like that. So Fred's just not going to play that poorly. He's not going to shoot
No.
that poorly. I thought Kyle early on was a little out of sync, dribbling off his knee. I just felt like the whole, OG wasn't involved in the offense at all early on until, late second quarter. So just they didn't take advantages of the strengths, in my opinion.
Well, and Randy, that's a good point. I mean, how many times did we see Pascal with a smaller player on him get right down under the cup and couldn't convert? I mean, those are the plays that I talk about that validate your effort in the comeback. You play hard, and all of a sudden you get a stop and you go down, you get a bucket at the other end, and you start to feel, as you said, Randy, that momentum, and it didn't come for them.
Jonesy, let me chime in here. And Randy, I'm going to ask both you guys this. So when you walk away from this game, you don't walk away from this game feeling that the Boston Celtics took anything away from the Toronto Raptors.
No, look, I think a better start, making some shots, and not having such a deep hole to try to crawl out of levels off your sense of heightened urgency. And as Randy said, you play with a little bit more controlled chaos if it's a 5-6 point game as opposed to a 16-17 point game, because they know we can't stay down 16 or 17 to these guys, even though it's early. And I think that fueled some of the poor play and gave Boston a little bit of confidence.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it looked like Siakam could very well have his way in the post if he wanted it. And I think Sam Mitchell said a really good thing there. He was just getting it at times too far out, right? And Mark and Serge kind of did the same thing. Mark's not, a traditional post-up guy anymore in the offense that they're running. But when Serge even posted up, it was a little bit further than what, which is ideal. You want to be able to make one, maybe two dribbles, bounce the guy with your shoulder and lay it up. And Pascal, Serge, Mark, to some extent, have that game. So I would like for them to use a little bit more of that post action, pound them, make Boston get into foul trouble like the Raptors are. Let's talk about the foul trouble. You can't play the defense you want to play when Siakam has 3 fouls in 5 minutes. When Kyle's got 2, when Gasol picks up 2 early, then Serge comes in and picks up 2. Like, I felt like they were battling themselves at times. I felt like they were battling the refs, and that they were playing to the refs a little bit too often instead of just playing their game. Just out of sync entirely.
Agreed,
so I don't
Randy.
feel like Boston beat them in that respect. I feel like Toronto comes back and says, okay, this went wrong. We're not going to shoot the ball this poorly again. We're going to do this, this, and this, and it's going to be a different outcome.
Well, and Randy, that's the dilemma for Nick Nurse now. Do I need to readjust my game plan, or was the game plan good enough and we didn't get off to a good start? As you said, we were fighting the refs and we were playing for calls and not the game. So maybe the game plan stays the way it is with a few tweaks, and you try to execute it better, because that's the toughest thing for a coach. Do I need to blow this up, change the game plan, or was the game plan actually really good and we just didn't execute it?
Little housekeeping, of course. We were all concerned about Kyle Lowry's injury. He played pretty well, actually. So few concerns there. But I do believe it's time for us to bring in the sixth woman of our broadcast team. That's Savanna Hamilton. Savanna, I don't want to hear what the fans were saying because I share their sentiments, but go ahead and tell us anyway.
Yeah, there were no surprise. Disappointed on Twitter, of course. We had some tweets come in for Arash Madani, who reported the Raptors, what a phenomenon. J.E. Skeets also contributed saying, good to know that when the Raptors play absolutely worst quarter of basketball imaginable, they'll only be down 16 points, duly noted. It's actually a good point he did make. Some teams will be down 30. Now, there was a question posed in the Facebook group by Peter. He asked, are we asking too much of Siakam? Jonesy, let's start with you.
No, you're not. I mean, this is the thing that people wanted to see, Savanna, Randy, and Akil. Can Pascal be the lead dog on a championship team? And to whom much is given, much is expected. The guy's a champion. He's done it the regular season. Nick Nurse has made no qualms about Pascal being the number one option. I mean, he's 5 of 16 today, but he had the foul trouble. And I can count at least 3 shots right under the cup that don't go down. if he makes those, now Boston's got to change. Maybe they send a double team at him. He pitches it out. Fred gets an easier look. Kyle gets an easier look. So, no, I don't think you're asking too much of him. It's if you're going to win a championship, these are things that he has to do.
Right.
Yeah,
You go.
I agree. I mean, I don't think we're asking too much of him. I feel like he's kind of gotten away from his game a little bit, and that's discouraging insofar as I feel like he could get out on the break a little bit more often. The Raptors as a team had 7 fast break points. They came in leading the NBA in fast break points at almost 19 a game for the entire season. So 7 is just, to me, unacceptable. Look, he's just not shooting it from 3 well, too. And Jonesy and Akil, you know this. When you make a 3, your whole game opens up, right?
Yes.
Mine does.
Okay, Jonesy, I know. I'll take it back.
Akil, Nick Nurse ain't giving you a uniform, brother. So
no time soon. But no, I get what you're saying. And for me personally, it's like, the way I would answer that question is who's asking? Because when I look at the Toronto Raptors and watch how they play, I don't know that Nick Nurse is putting Pascal Siakam out there and asking him to be Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, or anybody else like that, right? So the Raptors have found their formula for success. So maybe it might be us, the fans, who are used to traditional basketball teams built around one player. It might be the media who knows that new deal kicks in next year and they, want a plot line to justify the money despite the fact he's already won. But, I think everyone's asking for different things. And I don't think the Raptors are asking Pascal to be the same thing that people outside the team are. So
that's a great point, because we know on any one given night, it could be Pascal, it could be Serge, it could be Kyle, it could be Fred, it could be Norm Powell. There are lots of people that will take the steering wheel and drive the bus. So my answer to the question is no.
And let's like cut a guy a little slack too, right? Like he had a bad series to these people, and he averaged in the last series, he averaged 21 and 8 basically. Okay, so Pascal is fine. He's gonna be fine. Look, he missed those 2 bunnies early on and got into foul trouble. Jonesy, when you get into foul trouble, it just throws off your whole game. For some reason, that basketball players can't play well with 2 early fouls. It never happens almost. It's crazy.
It takes away, you're right, Randy. It takes away your aggressiveness. You start playing cautious. You start watching for the whistle. Everything becomes high alert.
Guys, next game is on Tuesday, to be determined the exact time. But fans really want to know what will be the biggest adjustment that the Raptors need to make come game 2. Jonesy, go.
Take some shots. Play your defense with a little bit more focus, and like I said, get off to a better start. I really thought, and it's maybe it's uncharacteristic, but I really thought, as Randy said, the foul trouble and the whistle impacted them early. They got down big. They realized we can't get down this big to this good a team. The urgency picks up, and there was as I said, no validation for it. I'm not sure you're going to see much different in terms of the actual game plan itself, maybe a few tweaks, but I really think that if you see a better start, this will be a better game.
I wholeheartedly agree. Like there was no flow. There was no energy. And part of that was, you're right, Jonesy, the foul trouble, but you have to play through that. You have to manufacture your own energy. And I think that's got to come from the defensive end. We're so used to seeing, especially in game 1s with this team, they're flying on defense. They're on a string. They're tagging people. They're running out. They're making guys hit shots that they're not used to making. And today, Boston made them. Like, part of the Raptors' defense is to give up that corner 3. Well, Boston at one point was 8 for 9 or 9 for 10 from the corner 3. So they have to, I think that the game plan is the same. You just got to get out there and contest more shots.
All right, Sav, thank you so much. And, just to throw in my answer, in case you're curious what my adjustment is, and it may sound stupid because I'm not the greatest basketball analyst, more of a host myself, but I'll throw my hat in the ring for this one and say, I think the Raptors found something, at least, and I've been talking about this a lot, throwing guys in the post. And I think that's going to allow you to control some earlier possessions in that first quarter. I think if they maybe use that card a little bit earlier in the game, and if they, because you guys talked about the success they had with Serge and how that kind of gets Pascal's rhythm going. I think if they kind of use that card a little bit earlier in the game, because they kind of used it later in the game in this game, I think that could be a huge addition to how they kind of control the way Boston plays. Thank you so much, Savanna. All right, that does it for the digital side, but there's still more to talk about, and this may not be a Raptors-specific subject, so I'll start with you, Jonesy, though, because you are a basketball historian, your family a part of Canadian and American basketball history. You and your bro have done so much. So today, the league took time out to honor a couple of individuals who, Chadwick Boseman never played in the NBA, but definitely, and anybody who's, a fan of the NBA is probably a fan of Black Panther. Then you go on to Lute Olson, one of the great coaches. I'm a big fan of Arizona, Gardner, Lauren Woods, all those guys. That was one of the teams I grew up with. And Cliff Robinson, infamously, Portland Trailblazer, going up against Mike. What does it mean to you that the league honored them, and what are you going to take away from that honoring?
I think it's good, especially at the time we're at in society, where those people are important to the Black community. Chadwick Boseman. I mean, Black Panther was great, but I liked him in 42 when he played, a true to life figure in Jackie Robinson, and gave a window into some of the things that Jackie Robinson went through. And it says something about his grace that he had this 4-year battle with colon cancer and nobody knew about it. So I'm glad the NBA did that. I remember Lute Olson as the head coach at Iowa at times, and before going to Arizona. And he gave us Damon. Go back further than you, Akil. He gave us Damon Stoudemire. He gave us Richard Jefferson. He gave us some of the great players out of Arizona, and was a true gentleman in the game. And then I got a call on Tuesday night from J.R. Harris, who was part of the Marshall Harris Sports Management Group that managed the contracts of the late Jerome Kersey, Doug Christie, Clifford Robinson. And they told me that Cliff was in really, really rough shape. And, he's a guy that did a lot for his family, moving them to Portland, making them secure after he made his money. He still contributed back to Connecticut, with Jim Calhoun's charities. And, we look at the age we're in now with social justice, trying to build bridges and bonds with the police. Cliff Robinson's from Buffalo, and he sponsored the youth police league in Buffalo, knowing that, hey man, we're trying to build a bridge between law enforcement and the kids on the street. So, man, it's sad to see these guys go. I mean, Lute Olson lived a full life, but Chadwick Boseman at 42, Cliff Robinson at 52, we lost, or 53, we lost Jerome Kersey at 52 a few years ago. It's just sad to see guys going, and it makes you recognize your own mortality. But good on the NBA. They're great at honoring their own in terms of basketball people, and nice of them to reach out and honor somebody like Mr. Boseman.
All right, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, it's so tough to lose people that are making a difference. And you mentioned Jonesy, those guys were making a difference, and whenever somebody of significance or some celebrity dies in this world, and it shows up on my Twitter feed, by far Chadwick Boseman was by far and away the most people tweeted about him the most on my timeline. It seemed like every single person for hours was tweeting about him. And that
it actually broke the record for the most retweeted tweet in the history of Twitter. So it's the most tweeted tweet of all time.
So that's why. I mean, it was so remarkable. And, when I started to learn more about what he did outside of being on the screen, then it really sort of, felt sad and terrible that somebody, this guy was visiting kids with terminal cancer, and then you have the other side where people were ridiculing him at times for his weight, not knowing that he was battling cancer during all this. And that to me is upsetting, but I also want to give a shout out and thoughts and prayers to Wayne Embry, who also lost his wife this past week. Very sad.
It has been a year like no other.
Yes,
I honestly say, and I'm blessed to be here with you guys in the safety of my own home, talking about Raptors basketball, win, lose, or draw. So to all our fans out there, I just want to extend from our team here our wishes of just health and safety during this very tumultuous year. The Toronto Raptors will play game 2 against the Boston Celtics. We'll be here to support and ride with you through that experience. I want to thank Jonesy. I want to thank Randy. I want to send a shout out to Randy's dad, as today is Randy's dad's 80th?
80.
Yeah, actually tomorrow, but the party's now, so I'm going to party.
Well, hey man, if I make it to 80, we're partying for a week. Never mind a day.
All right, and shouts out to my 6-woman Savanna Hamilton. An unfortunate night for the Toronto Raptors. They'll be back with a better effort in the next game. I promise you. That does it for Raptors Nightcap, a.k.a. Happy Hour. And what's my line again, guys? Keep balling.
Keep balling.
Out.